So solving linear inequalities using multiplication and division, or multiplication or division. So first we're going to look at multiplying and dividing by um, multiplying and dividing each side of the inequality by a positive number. Okay, so multiplying and dividing. And why do we multiply and divide? To isolate the variable, right? So we multiply and divide so that we can isolate the variable. So when we multiply or divide by the same positive number, it produces an equivalent equation or inequality, right? So that we know that we can multiply and divide by a positive number. So if a is greater than b, then we can divide both sides by c. The inequality would be the same. The sign will not switch if c is positive. Same thing if a is less than b, and then if you divide or you multiply by, if you divide, the sign does not switch, right? So as soon as you switch the sign, that's when it starts switching. The inequality switches if the sign is. So let's do some examples here. So it's going to say solve the inequality, and sometimes it might also say to graph it. When graphing, you already know how to graph on a number line, right? So we'll see how to go about it. And I'm sure you guys remember that. So n over 7 is greater than or equal to -1. So what we'll do is we multiply both sides by 7. And when we do that, you get n, and then -1 times 7 is -7. And then graphing on a number line, we look for -7. And then we go to the right hand side. Four b is less than 36. You divide both sides by 4. Now, as we're dividing by a positive number, the inequality sign does not switch. And then graphing again, we look for 9. Okay, so less than means you go to the left, right? Okay. Now what happens when we multiply or divide by a negative number? So that's slightly different, right? So if it's a negative number, right? So we're going to switch the sign if it's a negative number. So remember that whenever we multiply or multiply by a negative number, the inequality is going to switch the sign, right? So multiplying and dividing by a positive number does not switch the sign, and multiplying and divide by a negative number switches the sign. So let's see some examples here. All right, so it's multiplying by negative 4, and as you see, the inequality has switched to the less than became greater than. Okay, so pay attention to that. Whenever you are multiplying by a negative number, the inequality switches direction. The less than becomes greater than, the greater than becomes less than. So dividing and multiplying switches the sign by a negative number if you do that. Alright, so that's the main goal of this lesson, solving inequalities using multiplying or dividing. And it's important to remember that when we multiply or divide by a positive number, the inequality's direction does not switch. But when you multiply or divide by a negative number, then the inequality's direction switches. So pay attention to that detail, okay? All right.